Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Crypt Choir. I am your host, Lewis, and today we got another tournament breakdown hosted by Tapped Out, known as the Double Up Championship Series. I believe this is the store's first official cEDH tournament with Top Deck and entering their circuit. So, congrats on them on finally making that jump. I believe they used to have cEDH tournaments in the past, but not really at an official capacity. So it's great to see that going. But before we're moving forward with the breakdown of it, I do want to do a small little review and shout out to the store that hosted this tournament. I'll have some pictures of the store. Overall, great environment. It's a little tight, but I think it's just more of their layout with their counters that makes the tables a little awkward in their setup configuration, but they definitely have the room to make things a little bit more comfortable. Another thing I wanted to talk about too is their staff that ran the event. I completely forgot his name, unfortunately, but he was very great running the event, very open to feedback at the store, and was, willing to just hop onto the Top Deck Discord to get some questions answered and make sure things are going to be run really smooth. So I really appreciate that from the staff. They were very great and awesome to work with, and things ran fairly smooth for the most part. Some issues happened towards the end, which I'll go over once I get to the end of the breakdown, but honestly, overall, it ran pretty smooth. So let's get right into this tournament here. So right here, we have the usual meta breakdown. We got 4 blue farms, only 1 making it to the top cut, 3 Sisseys, 1 making it to the top cut, 1 Elsha making it in, 2 Glarbs, I am Gross, and a bunch of other 1-ofs. Now, as you can see here, this is basically all the decks. This is the entirety of it. There was 30 entries to this tournament, and I believe 5 decks that just weren't submitted. I'm pretty sure if I did my math right, which happens sometimes, but that's not a big deal. But yeah, with that in, normally this would have been, for most people, would know that this would be a top 10 cut. Unfortunately, since the store was very new, they weren't exactly sure, so they ran it strictly off of the Top Deck website and went straight to a top 4 cut, which is what they recommended at this size, which seems really weird. And I don't believe much of any stores or tournaments that I've been at this size would do it straight to top 4 cut. They've done top 10s as far as I can recall. So that was a little weird. Some people were not very happy about that, especially with some issues that the one real issue that happened at the end, which I'll go over. So I'm going to do a top 10 breakdown of it, which is what it should have been. So that's what I'll be going over for this event here. So let's get right into it. In 10th place, I got my boy Alan over here piloting some sweet hot stuff here. We got Iron Man, the Titan of Innovation. Now, for most of you might know Alan was running Thada Adele and doing very well with it. He's a great Magic player, so it's good to see that he's expanding to some other decks, though still within the vein of artifacts. But hey, you know what? Good to see that he's branching out. For most people that don't know what Iron Man does, it's 5 mana, 3 generic Izzet colors, legendary artifact creature, human hero, 4/4, flying haste, and has whenever Iron Man attacks, create a treasure token. Then you may sacrifice a non-creature artifact. If you do, search your library for an artifact card with mana value equal to 1 plus the sacrifice artifact's mana value. Put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. So it's basically a pot effect for artifacts. And let's see what we can do with those effects. So in the creature slot, we got some pretty good stuff. Usual kind of combos you would see within blue, within these like slow colors is Hullbreaker, Horror, Tidespout, Tyrant. And then we got Trinket Mage for some more artifacts, Phyrexian Metamorph, Fairy Mastermind, Hydro, Electric Specimen to protect your Iron Man's, Transplant Theorist. We're going to see a lot of unique cards that probably aren't seen in many other type of decks, but you'll see more in this kind of artifact heavy deck. So this one here, I don't remember. So it's Transplant Theorist, 3 generic, 1 blue, artifact creature, Phyrexian Artificer, 2/4. When it or another artifact enters the battlefield under your control, you may draw a card if you discard a card. And then 2 generic, put target card from your graveyard onto the bottom of your library. Right. I remember this will help do some loops and help reset your deck so you don't draw out. And then we have Bribery, Lauren Glorian Reveal, Seagate, yep. Generic and normal interaction suite, other than Thunderclap. That's something you don't see very often. Same with Commandeer and Misdirection, but they are pretty great cards. And then, of course, we have a huge suite of artifacts here. We got the Experimental Synthesizer, which is a good pod target for the Iron Man, so you get some value on ETBs and leaves. We got Disruptive Flute, which is pretty good to be able to get out with this deck, being able to bounce it to and reset it. Got Manifold Key, generic to reset, Assault or the One Ring, usual stuff there, Mana Vault, all that stuff. Sculpt and Steel. We have Scale of Chisgoria. Now, this one here, I don't recall ever seeing until I saw Alan play this card, and it's 3 generic artifact, affinity for artifacts. You may play Scale of Chisgoria anytime you can play an instant, so it has flash. And tap, target creature gets +0/+1 until end of turn. Now, I believe this is just a odd target, but I did see this come into effect with buffing certain creatures. So when the trades were trying to be made potentially to save some creatures. So I did see this effect actually pop off in a game, and it actually was useful, which was hilarious. And same thing with Tooth of Chisgoria, which is the same thing except for power. So I've seen these 2 cards actually, the effect come into play with tapping and buffing up creatures, which is pretty funny. And then we have Saravok's Tome, another new card, which I believe this is from Baldur's Gate, I believe. 4 colorless artifact. When Saravok's Tomb enters the battlefield, you take the initiative, tap it for a generic. If you have the initiative, add 2 instead. And then 3, tap it, exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a non-land card. You may cast that card without paying its mana cost. Activate only if you've completed a dungeon. Pretty sweet card, especially if you're able to manipulate the top card of your library and get the Tide Spout or the Hullbreaker Horror, and then you can just get it for free. And then, of course, One Reek and Winding Clock, some great stuff. In the enchantments, we got quite a bit of enchantments as well. We got the Copy Artifact, obviously, a Steel Enchantment, Copy Enchantment, Mirror Maid, the Rhystic, and of course, Mind Over Matter, which makes infinite taps, untaps, and mana loops as well. And then 24 lands, pretty small on the mana base, surprisingly. I know we get all the rocks, but still surprised to see such a small mana base. I am surprised I don't see any of the artifact lands here. Yeah, I don't see any of the artifact lands. So that is a bit surprising. I figured I would see at least one. So you could see most of it. It's like the combos, you just make infinite mana and then you can draw out Fairy Mastermind. I did mention to him that you could just put in a Walking Ballista to make it a little easier instead of going through Fairy Mastermind or Transplant Theorist kind of like loops, and it just makes the win easier when you have just Orthasa, but maybe just Ballista would be better. But yeah, that's kind of the usual thing. Iron Man pot into wins and then just kind of get there, which is pretty cool. So congrats, Alan, for still showing that even outside of your pet deck, you are still a great Magic player and making it to, you would have made it to the top 10 if they did a top 10. But yeah, congratulations, and let's move on. In 9th place, we got John Lambert's Blue Farm deck. We have here just generic Blue Farm stuff. The only thing that stands out to me right away is Dothy and Flesh Duplicate. I know most players are just playing the Mockingbird, and Dothy has really been cut quite some time ago, and I don't really see it very often. So that's unique to see that. I feel like wherever he's at in this local meta, I'm sure there's a lot of graveyard stuff, so Dothy is warranted in the deck. And then seeing enough creatures that he wants to copy for sure with Flesh Duplicate, I would assume. Here at the sorceries, we got the usual stuff. We have a Git Probe. Okay, I like Git Probe. Git Probe's constantly going in and out of my deck. It's like my last kind of flex slot for me in Blue Farm. It's good to see Git Probe. I think Git Probe's a good card. Helps break the top deck tutors, because there's, I don't know how many times I've been in situations where I have like an Imperial Seal, Vampiric Tutor, or like an Enlightened Tutor, and other like WinCon, I just need to get the last piece and I don't want to wait a whole turn. So having Git Probe to help crack those top deck tutors is pretty good. And then in the instance, we have the usual sweet. Good to see the Angel's Grace. Fantastic. A good gamer. And a Braid. Interesting to see in a Braid. I don't think that's a common piece of interaction. I think Awful plays a Braid sometimes, if I recall correctly. But yeah, I don't see a lot of people playing a Braid. That's interesting. I'm wondering what this a Braid is for. I can't imagine if we're just being deal 3 damage to target creature. So you have swords and path that you could be running instead. So I feel like this is mainly for artifacts. So I'm interested on what artifacts he's afraid of that warrants playing an Abrade. So that is interesting to see. But the rest of the instants, they all are the usual split. Oh, Strict Serenade. Okay, yeah. Piece we don't see very often now that Dockside is not around anymore, which I believe this, well, at least for me and people around me, that was mainly the only target for the Strict Serenade for the Dockside, and then Thassa and whatever other creatures like Ground Abolisher were problems. But yeah, so interesting to see a Strict Serenade and a Braid in the deck. Going down to the artifacts, usual artifacts as well. We do have a Cursed Totem, which not surprising. I know there's a lot of Thisay and Kinnan down in the SoCal area, at least in my experience. So yeah, it makes sense to see that. Imposter Mech, that's something I don't see very often, for sure in like Tivit, but I would assume this is just to have another clone. So I see he's pretty heavy in the clones, as opposed to the usual blue farm list. And of course, this is great with the Bowmaster, obviously. The One Ring as well, still on the One Ring too. Okay. And then enchantments, yep, just Fish, Breach, Study, Smothering Tithe. No copy or steal enchantments, and no Necrophones, which I would agree with. I think Necro is kind of a bait, but that's just personal opinion. And then, of course, the usual kind of land package. Oh, we have one island, the Cephalid Coliseum. Huh. That's interesting. I would assume this island is for, probably there's a lot of like Blood Moon like effects in his local meta. Because I know in my local meta, there's like 3 different decks that run Blood Moon like effects. So when I go to local tournaments, I try to slot in one basic just because of that. So I would assume this is something he slotted in beforehand or just kept it in and expected to see like Magda or some other deck that runs like a back to basics or Blood Moon effects. But yep, that's it. Congratulations for getting a top 9 spot. Let's move on. In 8th place, we have Aaron Cho running a Malcolm Alluring Scoundrel deck. Now, unfortunately, the deck is not here anymore, so I would assume it got deleted, but that kind of sucks because I was excited to see what that deck looked like. Surprising to see just the mono blue Malcolm being played as a commander. I feel like that card is very weak and not strong by itself. That can really generate a lot of value. It's pretty slow in what it does, but I was excited to go over it, but unfortunately, it's not around, so we're moving on. In 7th place, we got Corey running his Yeva deck. Yeva wins on the stack. Now, I'm fairly familiar with Yeva specifically just because I've had a buddy of mine, Rodrigo, who used to play this deck a lot. So I was very prepared going into this game with him because I was in a game in a pod with this player. Now, what I wasn't ready for is him to have the nuts and turbo out infinite mana his turn 2 with, I believe it was Wirewood Symbiote, Priest of Titania, and I forgot what other cards it was. Allura Shepherd, so we couldn't interact with him, and him just like bouncing stuff, recasting it to just make infinite mana. One green pip kept going up. It was disgusting and it was crazy, and he just wasn't finding any outlets for the mana, but he just had that infinite mana at instant speed because of Yeva, and then we couldn't do anything because of the Allosaur Shepherd. So it was pretty toxic and kind of hilarious. So we kind of just sat there and waited to die because none of us could get there faster than he could find a way through cycle his deck. I believe he finally drew a Beast Whisper and just cycled through the deck until he got the win con and whatever's like infinite combat damage and killed us or something like that. Yeah, I think forgot what it was. I believe it was with Finale, but yeah, it was insane. But yeah, the whole thing is just Yeva turns on infinite, makes everything green creatures with flash, and you just have these instant speed creatures that can do and generate or turn on combos with like Dimir Sabertooth, like I just said, the combo right now, Beast Whisper to cycle through the deck, and then you have like a lot of interaction, a lot of unique stuff that you can do. Obviously the tutors to find stuff out, and some stacks pieces like Nora, Thorn of Amethyst to slow down your opponents in case you don't have the nuts. But yeah, it can be pretty crazy. Just the nature of it being creatures is very hard to interact with. So I've seen tables with, especially me in some games, where dude just going off winning and everyone's like, do you have something? And you just, I've showed my hand with every interaction in my deck other than Force of Will and Pact. I have a single MBT that I could cast, but I know that was some way to stop it with the Veils. So it was just like, yeah, we lose, and yeah, it's pretty crazy. So that's kind of like the good thing about Yeva. The bad thing is you're playing mono green, and you don't really have a high card quality or very good draw engine. So if you mull down to like 3 or 4, that's it. You're probably stuck there unless you get lucky and top deck some tutors to get that creatures out like a Peace Whisperer to be able to cast stuff and draw cards. But other than that, yeah, you're kind of, you don't really have a lot of stuff. So in my opinion, running Yeva, I get the reasons for No Rod and Thorn Amethyst, but I feel like it might just be better to run different kind of stacks pieces and be running like the One Ring and making sure you have a high volume of card draw effects to make up for the fact that you're playing probably the worst color in Magic right now at the moment. But yeah, good job, Howard. Crazy hand that you had there, and yeah, see if you continue to do well on this deck. In 6th place, we got Samuel with his Attraxulation, Attraxolu, Attraxolution Multiplication. I think I got that right. So I believe we've seen Samuel previously in some other top videos, top cuts. So it's good to see that he's still doing well with Atraxa and going forward. Still surprising, honestly, to see that there's still Atraxa players with the big hits with the Mana Rocks that we've seen. But so let's see what we got here. We have, of course, the usual Teferi kit and combo, usual kind of package we see in these colors. The Miss Hologriffin, obviously, for the food chain. Yeah, nothing really stands out to me from this. See here the sorceries. Yup, usual kind of stuff. Instant speed, same kind of interaction suite. Nothing sticks out to me. No Angel's Grace. Artifacts, same kind of artifacts. No One Ring. And then enchantments, yeah, food chain, Ristic, touch, smothering, carpet, yeah, usual kind of stuff. No copy enchantment, no none of that malarkey here. And then the lands, yeah, usual high amount of 28. So, but yeah, everything else seems to be the usual kind of tracks and stuff. But good to see Sam still topping with this deck. In 5th place, we got Wayne once again being able to make another top with his Zerda deck, otherwise known as Boros Armory Ballista. This is a deck that I always think is something, and I don't see anyone doing anything with it. And then I have Wayne come in here with this deck and validate my assumptions of this deck that it could be cracked in the right hands. I mean, if we go through this, we got a bunch of outlets. We got the Walking Ballista, Oswald to turn on combos, Oriok Salvagers for infinite mana, Liberator to make things at instant speed, Godo if all things come to worst, you can have Godo a combo in combat to kill your table, and just the usual kind of other stuff we would see in these kind of colors, Aven, all that stuff, Witch Enchanter, Metalworker to make sure you can turbo out some of your artifacts. Like it's crazy to be able to get out all the stuff to be able to make infinite mana and then do whatever with the Staff of Domination, Staff of Completion, Umbral Mantle, infinite mana, Ballista, like all those infinite mana stuff that you can think of. It's pretty crazy. Now, the only stuff here that I'm surprised about, or not surprised about, but that's new is we got Adaptive Omni Tool. I don't recall this card. I believe it's in the new set. So 2 colors. A crypt creature gets +1/+1 for each artifact you control. Oh, okay. Whenever a crypt creature attacks, look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may reveal an artifact card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Equip 3. Wow, this is fantastic. This turns on combat even more so now. Instead of just relying on the Godo, you can just put this, slap this on a Ragavan, slap this on a Weathered Wayfarer or a Canonist. Like, damn, this could actually do some nasty work mid to late game. That's pretty crazy. We got Argent Days, Days, right? Colorless white artifact when ETBs with 2 oil counters on it. Whenever 2 or more creatures attack, put an oil counter on it. Remove 2 oil counters from Argent. Exile another target non-permanent. Its controller draws 2 cards. Oh, interesting. You can exile your own stuff to start drawing 2 cards. Worst case scenario, exiles some crazy stuff from an opponent like a Breach or Necropotence. That's interesting. Okay. And then we got Jitte, Powerhouse, usual. What's this here? This is Conqueror's Flail. Yeah. Yeah. Everything else here seems kind of the huge. And then enchantments. Yep. Same kind of thing you would expect. Deafening Silence, Blind Obedience. And then a Breach. Oh, interesting. Actually, a Breach. I mean, yeah. I guess you could do some combos. It just works as a value piece, really, I guess, with Oriok Salvagers and LED. Yeah, okay, that's cool. Trouble in Pairs, obviously, and then 26. Anything unique? What's this? Abstergo Entertainment. Add colorless, 1 mana. exile it, return up to one target historic card from your graveyard to your hand, then exile all graveyards. Oh, okay, just to be able to get back like Ballista or some artifact, and then also just being able to exile the graveyard. That's cool. I like that. That's interesting. That's really cool. And just fair, yep. Arena of Glory to give your stuff important combo pieces haste if you really need to, like what's it called, Oswald Fiddlebender, or the Goblin Engineer, maybe even Goblin Welder, to be able to give them haste and then start a combo like right away. Oh, another card I didn't notice. Thran Spider, 3 colorless, 2/4. Reach. When it enters the battlefield, you and target opponent each create a tapped Power Stone. 7. Look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal an artifact card from among them. Put it into your hand. Put the rest of the bottom of your library in a random order. Oh, yeah. Just, I would assume when you generate infinite mana, you're just sinking into this until you find the Walking Ballista, and then you just, shoot down the table. But yeah. So this is an interesting deck. Pretty cool. I'm surprised I don't see more of this, honestly, and I'm surprised I see more of cringe decks like Winota instead of Zerda, which is like, I think, a little bit more stronger. I know Winota could be a little bit scarier, but I feel like this, just the combo potential you have and the density of the combos you have, are just a little bit more reliable than getting stuff off the top of the deck to kill your table. And then when you're playing Winota, people kind of like, overestimate damage or get freaked out, and they just start board wiping or, incorrectly wasting all their stuff on the Winota sometimes. So I feel like Zerda's just a better Boros commander than that, or probably in general, like right now. Oh my god, there's so bunch of cards that I keep like going over, not noticing. What do we got here? Reckless Handling, colorless red sorcery. Search your library for an artifact card, reveal it, put it in your hand, shuffle, then discard a card at random. If an artifact card was discarded this way, Reckless Handling deals 2 damage to each opponent. It's a gamble for our artifacts. Huh. Yeah, it's just another gamble, really. Cool. Yeah, that's pretty tight. It doesn't matter too if you have like with Auriok Salvager and you want to discard your LED. So that's pretty cool. Honestly, yeah, that's hot. Yeah, every time I keep looking at this deck and I keep just seeing things that are just really good, and yeah, I just feel like just a lack of colors and interaction is probably what's keeping this deck down. But yeah, good job, Wayne, to see another top cut from you with this Zerda deck. In 4th place, we got Jeremy, the Sisay Weatherlight Master, with his Sisay deck here. I don't believe anything is different, judging just from a quick glance at the deck. I believe it's just the usual kind of Sisay stuff we have here. Yeah, nothing seems new or out of place. Sisay just still doing crazy Sisay things just because it's just hard to interact. You can't counterspell activated abilities. Yeah, it's crazy. I was in a game with them actually, and he had just a disgusting hand. His hand, or like in the game as we were going, he played Kinnan, followed up with Cauldron, followed up with casting Dahada, and then milling Gigantha, and then having 2 ways to go infinite the next turn to be able to win. And no one had enough stuff to be able to stop what he was doing. I'm looking at my hand with like 2 counter spells and was like, ugh. In my hand, I kept the pretty greedy, turn 3, I believe, Breach combo. And then he played the Soul Cauldron, and that kind of ruined it. No, I think it was turn 2. And then he played Cauldron and he just turned it off. And then I was able to remove it, but then I could only do the combo turn 3, I believe. I had a bounce. Right, I think I had a bounce. But yeah, it was just, he just had the nuts, and we were able to double like removal to get rid of his board, but the Gigant in the graveyard with the Cauldron underneath and any creature, he just had a disgusting hand. So Sisay is still a crazy deck. Probably the only deck I fear right now in the meta. I think in terms of card quality and what it can do, it's Sisay. Normally for some people it would be Rogsai, and that is a deck I fear as well, but that's mainly because the table being greedy and not keeping up interaction. But if I know I'm with a table with people that are fairly responsible and good Magic players, I don't need to worry about the Rockside player, because I know everybody is going to pummel Rockside into the ground where they need to be and not come back from. But when I'm in random tournaments, it can be a little scary. But I think Sisay is the only actual deck of cards that I'm like, oh, this deck is just scary to me, because mainly because I can't stop it, other than just getting rid of Sisay or bouncing some of the pieces that get it going, because I can't use my counter spells. But yeah, so good job, Jeremy, making another top cut. Something kind of what I expect now in the Southern California area, honestly. But let's move on. In third place, we got Adriel with his no bad cards blue farm cEDH deck. And here we have first place Redemption Event at Fishbowl 4, nice. Top 4 Championship double up, that's the one I'm talking about here. And then top 8 at New Deck Who Dis. I'm not familiar with that tournament actually. But yeah, let's look at this blue farm list. So yep, usual kind of stuff here. The only thing that sticks out is the Metamorph, Delny, which, man, Delny's just never worked out for me. Professional Facebreaker, Personal Mana, and everything else seems kind of the same. Then here at the sorceries, we got the usual stuff. We have a Supreme Verdict instead of Deluge, which honestly a little surprising to me because I feel like Deluge is like a little bit better to run when you're kind of, with your Nas piles. And maybe if you have like your Crom out, you can, pay 3 and not kill your Crom and still keep it around. But yeah, actually surprising to see Supreme Verdict. I get it because it can be countered. So there's some times where, you're up against TNT decks or, maybe Sisay decks with some that are limited counter spells. But, you can be across some other decks with a lot of creature stuff that they don't want this to resolve, a board wipe to resolve. So Supreme Verdict, I see, can come in and help with that. In the instance, we got the usual suite as far as I can tell. Good to see Angel's Grace. I see we're also running a Red Blast. Other than the Pyroblast, we're running both of these. Okay, interesting here. Let's see here. Everything else seems about the same. Artifacts, usual stuff here. Cursed Totem, of course. Yep, that's kind of something I'm seeing very often over here. No One Ring. Okay, and then we have, wow, Telepathy. 1 blue, your opponents play with their hands revealed. This is, I forgot about this. This is wild. In the final pod, I was watching some of the gameplay and I saw him cast this card. Because I came to the table and I was wondering, like, why is everybody like revealing their hand? Like some kind of deal's going on. And then I asked them and they all just point at Telepathy. I'm like, I was shook. I'm sure a lot of people have mentioned that Telepathy is a bad card because it can show an opponent that most of your opponents don't have any interaction and they can't stop your combo, or what interaction they have, so you know how to play around it, and then you could potentially like bully some players into using their interaction, and then other people, not backing down, passing priority, and then stuff happening. So I think Telepathy is just a very scary card that probably shouldn't be run, but hey, you got him to got into the top pod. So and then we got the 27 lands, usual stuff. Do I see the Survey land? Am I blind? I don't think I see it. Interesting, no Survey land. Playing a City of Traders instead, just get some more mana wrap. Okay, yeah, makes sense. Yeah, but yeah, the rest of the stuff is kind of usual, kind of blue farm stuff with a little bit of changes for like their particular meta. But yeah, it's all pretty much the same. The biggest thing is just this Telepathy, which is wild, crazy to see. But yep, good job on your top 4 finish, and we'll move on. Well, in second place we have Dr. Infamous, who was playing a Rockside deck since I was there watching some of the top 4 game, but it looks like they were probably one of the few people that didn't submit a deck list, so that's tragic to see. So I can't go over Rockside, but as far as I could tell, it was very similar to all the other Rockside decks. Nothing really stood out to me from what I can remember. But what I do remember was something very tragic in the final pod, is where he had, I believe it was turn 2 Thoracle combo, but when he went to go for it, he tapped the wrong mana sources. So he had passed Assa, everyone passed on it, ETBs, and then right away he passed priority, and everybody was like, what are you doing? And he looks down in shame and says, I tapped my mana wrong. I don't have a black for the consultation. And everyone just stood up looking at his board, and sure enough, he tapped mana wrong and didn't have black up for the consultation. And everybody was just like, no. Oh, it was so tragic to see. So pay attention to your opponent's mana rocks and mana sources to make sure they're using the correct colors, because sometimes they might just shoot themselves in the foot and not use the right colors and mess up a win. But yeah, that was Dr. Infamous. His run there, I believe it stated it was his first real tournament that he attended. So as you can see here, even if you're new, Rockside will just kind of carry you there. It's It's a pretty good deck. Just from what I've seen overall, he seemed like a pretty experienced player, knew kind of what he was doing, just a little misplay. But hey, that everybody does that. So yeah, happens sometimes. But good job, Dr. Infamous, for making it second place. In first place, we got Kenshu with his Elsha of the Infinite deck called Elsha's Flashy Show. Now, this was a surprise to see, and an even bigger surprise to see him make it to the top pot. Not because Elsha is not a good card, but just sometimes it can be too slow because it's 5 mana to get it out there, and sometimes people kind of get spooked and like really try to get rid of it ASAP. But yeah, it was interesting to see it. Now, for those who don't know, Elsha, you just manipulate the top card of your library, and you get stuff like Helm of Awakening to be able to cast stuff off the top repeatedly, and just go for a Ether Flux Reservoir win. It's an ISO Rev deck as well, so you can make infinite mana that way, and then you got stuff like Counterbalance, Power Balance to get out some of the combo pieces. Mainly the whole point of the deck, but yeah, going through, we have here the DRC to help set up for like breach combos and manipulate the top card of your library. Bergie doing Bergie stuff, to fairy combo. We have Transmute Artifact to get out artifact stuff, Personal Tutor to put things at the top of the deck, Brainstorm also to manipulate the top, and usual interaction suite here. Everything pretty, normal. Artifacts, same artifacts here, but with the Divining Top for the combos. And then we have a bunch of enchantments. Now, these, I'm not sure I'm aware with some of these. So what do you have here? Ancestral Knowledge. Colorless blue enchantment, Chameleon Upkeep 1. When it comes into play, look at the top 10 cards of your library, then remove any number of them from the game and put the rest back on the top of your library in any order. And then release, shuffle your library. Okay. Oh, and just another way to manipulate the top card. I don't think I've seen this deck. Have Elsha decks been running this in the past? I'm actually not familiar, and I don't know. I believe this is my first time seeing this card. Then we got Artist Talents, fairly new card. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you may discard a card if you draw a card. Yeah, just to cycle through your deck. Non-creature spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. Also helps with the top combo when you get it to level 2, so you can just start popping off the top of your deck with the Flux Reservoir. So yeah, makes sense. Amphibian Downpour. Now this is interesting. I have yet to see this card be cast. I've been hovering over some games and I see people have the card in their hand, but I've never actually seen it being cast and popping off. So I'm interested to know how well this card actually is. I feel like it's a pretty cool board wipe for blue to be able to get rid of a lot of problematic creatures. Though, it's really hard for if there's a Grand Abolisher, that's it. You can't cast a spell. And I feel like those are kind of effects, the most thing you want to be able to hit with something like this. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's not that great, honestly. It doesn't stop Thassa as well. So I'm not sure what's the point of this card, really. I don't feel like it does enough, but maybe I'm missing something. And then we got 25 lands. You have Mistress Workshop to be able to cast those artifacts ASAP, and usual kind of here. But yeah, congratulations on winning the tournament with Elsha of the Infinite. Cool to see an old school commander still being able to show some results, at least locally. And hopefully we'll see more of Elsha and some other old school commanders like Tulane in some bigger tournaments making the top cuts. But yeah, so going back to the issue, which I briefly talked about, is the tournament should have definitely been a top 10 cut, but they wanted to do top 4 because they were scared of top deck punishing them or them not following the rules. But most people were telling them, like, dude, they're not wizards. They're not gonna come down on you and beat you up and take your lunch money. They want to make sure people are playing cEDH and playing it very smoothly. So, but yeah, it's good to see that he was still willing to listen. Sora was willing to listen to feedback and take into consideration all the stuff that I and others were giving to them. So it was good to hear that as well. Another issue, in my opinion, actually no. Before I move on to that, sorry. The issue was with the top cut as well. Once we get to I believe it was 3 rounds, then cut. But on the cut, the third round, it was all of the top players got potted up against each other, which the algorithm should have prevented that. Though I know with low attendance numbers, the algorithm can break sometimes. And what probably didn't help is me and a few other people showed up late to the tournament and got added in like round 2. Now that's because of the issue with the store starting a little bit earlier than what people thought it started on the page. So Yeah, that's another issue I'll talk about in a bit. It's not really that big, but so I feel like, you know, a mix of potentially low numbers and people joining in really late, it kind of screwed up the algorithm and pairing people together. So that kind of whacked. And that's also another feedback that we gave of like, hey, generate the pod or just take two random people from the top pod and pod them down just to be able to make sure they can't just draw into the top four, which they did. You know, I wish that was something that the store was willing to budge on for the sake of everybody else in the tournament, and not just be auto locked out from being a chance to get into the top pod. So that kind of sucked. Another issue was the proxy limit. That's something that I don't understand. Pretty annoying that stores are still doing with the proxy thing. You know, a lot of them have this weird notion that if you allow proxies, people aren't going to buy product, which is not the case. If they didn't have money before to buy cards, they are not going to have money magically now to buy cards now that you are not allowing proxies or are allowing proxies. Like, it's not going to change the fact. If people don't have the money to buy cards, they're not going to buy cards. But Magic players want to buy cards. They want to bling out their deck. That is a very common sense and well-known thing about Commander, especially. People want to buy cards. They want to have the physical stuff if they're able to, obviously. So that's a nitpick for me that I wish the store would just go full proxy, because I have a group of 4 to like 10 people that would love to come to tournaments more often, but lots of times they can't because stores implement proxy limit. And most of these people aren't as financially stable as some other people and myself, so they can't afford to, you know, buy all these cards, these very expensive cards that aren't reprinted anymore, and then also spend money on traveling for tournaments. So that's something, a nitpick for me as well. Another nitpick as well is the start time. I believe it started at 9 a.m., which is pretty early. I mean, that's usually something you would see from a like 2-day event. So starting at 9 a.m. kind of sucked, mainly for me because I'm like 3.5 hours drives away. So that's annoying for me. I don't know if it's a big deal for most people within the LA area, but like 10 o'clock is pretty early. I feel like they should definitely start at the average and normal time, the standard time of like 11 to 12 p.m. as other, you know, single day tournaments with like 5 rounds do. So hopefully they change that in the future. Hopefully they remove the proxy limits. But overall, great experience, great time there at the store. It was really nice. Fantastic staff. They ran things very well, with this being their first time. So hopefully we see more tournaments from them. I'm definitely going to attend the next one that they do. So I hope that's soon. And yeah, that's going to be the end of my top cut here. Thank you guys so much for tuning in for another video. Congratulations to all the people that made top 4 and to the rest that would have made it to top 10. Thank you guys so much. If you want to see more breakdowns of these tournaments that we happen out here in the West Coast, subscribe, like the video, comment down below if you participated in this tournament or if any decks surprised you or things that crazy stuff that happened at the tournament that you were there for. I'd like to hear it as well. Thank you guys so much. Have a good night.